Welcome to the data metaphor space.
What is the John F. Kennedy you know like? John Kennedy was the first of our presidents to face the realities of the Cold War, the first to face them as a world leader and a world citizen. When he took office, there were no missiles pointed at us. When he took office, there were no Russians on the high seas, no rocket ships hurtling toward the United States. But the world was a different place. It was a different world. Our hopes were bound up in the success of the Marshall Plan. Our fears were centered on the communist menace. Our worries were about whether the Iron Curtain would descend on Europe and the communist empire grow. There were no millions of students studying in our universities. There were no millions of students in our schools. There were no millions of students learning the basic elements of our free enterprise system. And there were no millions of people with families, with children, who would go to work and put in a day's work. And that was a different world. John Kennedy took the first step toward a more open world. He tried to make the world more open. He tried to make it more secure. He tried to do it by giving our allies a sense of security. If you are John F. Kennedy, what is the most happy thing for you? It was important for me to reassure the American people and the world that the missiles were removed because there was still the possibility of an accident, a misunderstanding, or a misunderstanding between myself and my brother, or between myself and my brother and his team. I had to show the world that I was able to act with self-control and with courage. To have been right, I think. You can almost hear the smile as Kennedy utters those words. He was a political genius, a cultural icon, and he made the United States the global leader it is today. He was also a man of contradictions. Kennedy was both an American hero and a scoundrel. But what is most amazing is that Kennedy was a political failure in his own time. His vision for the United States didn't materialize. He was too idealistic and it cost him. I was very lucky to have had my teacher David Kinlick introduce me to Kennedy's books as an undergraduate. My experience of Kennedy was to become one of the great pleasures of my life. I didn't know that I would also be the beneficiary of the next generation of students and readers being introduced to Kennedy through the books I wrote. For years, I thought Kennedy's idealism was too much for the United States to bear. I also felt he was too idealistic for his own good. I was a political cynic and he was a great romantic. But as I learned more about Kennedy and studied his biography, I began to change my mind. I began to see his genius and his courage, and to understand the great American experiment he was leading. I also saw that his vision for America was a positive and not a negative one. When I was young, I never understood why Kennedy was so different from the other presidents I studied. I assumed it was because he was a Catholic. But as I got older, I understood. His Catholicism was a metaphor for the difference between his idealism and my cynicism. When I first read his books, I thought Kennedy's idealism was an indictment of the United States. If you are John F. Kennedy, what is the most disappointing thing for you? I think that was the end of the dreams. That's when the political crisis hit me. That's when I became very aware of my limitations as a politician. I could never be a president who could carry on an election year that was marked by a growing polarization in our country. I could never be the president who could hope to overcome the deep and persistent suspicions of his own people about the loyalty of those who would serve him. I could never be the president who could lead the world, as President Kennedy had, in an effort to end the threat of nuclear war. The day John Kennedy was shot, as the sound of gunshots rang out in Dealey Plaza on November 22, 1963, the world was shocked. At 12:30 p.m., President Kennedy was shot in the head while speaking to a joint session of Congress. He died 15 hours later. Some people blame Lyndon Johnson for his death. However, many other people blame Lee Harvey Oswald. In addition to being shot, Oswald was also arrested and charged with the assassination of President Kennedy. Oswald was also charged with killing a police officer, John Togg, and a federal officer, James Togg. He was found guilty of killing the two Toggs. However, he was found not guilty of killing the president. But who really killed the president? Was Oswald alone?